talking about the road projects.
Thank you, Adam. So currently, does everybody know about karmalink.com? So you can go to www.karmalink.com, and that's where we have most of our up-to-date information as far as even some past projects that we've done over the last 5 years. We updated that in 2016 when we started a pretty big infrastructure program, and that brought a lot of the roundabouts to the east side, multi-use paths that completed 96 and Keystone. We also just, this year, we had our final piece of multi-use path that we constructed down there on 96th Street between Hazeldale and 96th Street. So if you haven't been down there, go take a look at that. So we've been busy. We're starting to get further into construction on Range Line Road now. So just this week, we closed down the intersection of Range Line and Walnut. Walnut, it will be a new intersection, new roundabout. And once that's complete, that will take you over to Veterans Way and Mona Boulevard. So really actively working on constructing the grid in downtown, being able to give us multiple routes as you travel downtown. As part of that roundabout project, we'll also be extending the streetscape project from City Center up to Elm Street. So that'll be taking that roadway from 5 lanes down to 2 lanes. There'll be 1 lane in each direction. And then we'll also have a separated pedestrian bicycle facility. So there'll be a 10-foot path that'll be behind it.
This is not about the condition of the streets, but I'm wondering about the light on 96th Street at the entrance to the mine. Is there any possibility that we could eliminate that?
It's coming out.
It is?
It's coming out.
Good, thank you.
There you go.
It's been one of my pet peeves too.
All right. Raise your hand if you got questions, and I'll come around and we'll put a mic in your face like I'm on the old Jerry Springer show. It's a big room, though, to walk in.
When are they going to start on 3rd Avenue from Great Old Drive to Carmel Drive?
All right.
That we don't have funded. We have it funded from Grado north up to First Street, south of Main Street.
Are there any plans for that yet?
Yeah, I'd like to see that approved. We have swales or ditches, not curbs. We gotta be real careful the businesses in there. It's a lot tighter and harder to do.
And we need access, so I need to make sure it's not a divided road.
I can hear you.
Here, I can put the mic.
You said, we have a business along there, we get a lot of big trucks in and out.
Yeah.
I need to make sure it's not a divided road right there.
We'll make sure whatever, like, we don't have anything designed now. Make sure those trucks get in and out. You have to do that for every business.
Okay. Yeah, take a seat one over here.
So you guys didn't mention it, you were talking about all the great things that have happened, but you didn't mention the solar farms. I was wondering if you could talk about that and what that means to the city.
Sure. Want me to choose the mic?
Here, I'll get my steps in.
Everyone needs a step.
The
Utilities,
up till about 7 or 8 years ago, we're using almost $1 million of electricity a year. In spite of the increases, we
Kind of crack the water.
Something happened with electrical.
Can you hear me now? Okay. So even about 5 or 6 years ago, we're spending over $1 million a year for our water and sanitary sewer departments, all the processing, pumping the water out of the ground, treating it, pumping it up in the towers to create pressure for the fire hydrants and so on. We made a bunch of improvements to our plants. We started to use a methane flame, which is a gas that needs to be burned off as part of the sewage treatment process. We started to utilize almost 100% of that energy source. And so we got in our in spite of the utility company increases we got from Duke Energy and AES or Indianapolis Power and Light, we got that $1 million a year down to about $800,000. And then we started to look at the solar farms. We installed 2. Looks like we're gonna get about a 10% return on investment annually for 20 years on that, and we'll reduce what we pay to the utility company even more. It's renewable energy, which is good. Hopefully make our air quality better in this area, and set an example for some other people to do the same thing. We're looking, you know, I remember what happened in Texas this year when they were out of water and electricity for a long time. You know, one of my worst nightmares is always what happens if we didn't have electricity for an extended period of time. A few hours, okay, we can deal with that. What if it went on for 7 or 8 days because of some natural or man-made disaster? And so having those photovoltaic panels could become very important. We're looking at ways of storing some of that energy in batteries that could be then put on mobile vehicles and taken to power lift stations, taken over to the hospitals to power them, and have enough of them that you can circulate them. You know, have one charging while others are being used. We still have, I think, about 8 lift stations, which pumps. You know, we're trying to have a gravity sewer where the sewage. This is fun stuff to talk about. You have gravity sewers, except for about 8 places where we have to pump it up. Well, if electricity goes out, you've got backups in those areas, which can eventually get into your houses. So to have, you know, we have generators to handle that if we had to, but what if we didn't have any propane or fuel to run those generators after a few days, or if you couldn't get, well, how are you going to get fuel out of an underground tank if you don't have any way to pump it out too? So we're looking at battery storage and photovoltaics as a backup for a lot of our key functions in the city, and those photovoltaic farms are the first step in some of that too. But so anyway, that's the story. That's where we're trying to go with them. We'd like to install more. We're also looking at whether it makes sense to put them on some of the city-owned parking structures downtown, be a canopy, keep the sun off your car and the rain off your cars, and look at what the return on investment would be for those as well. And so far, the return on investment is pretty good. The city can get 10% return on investment. That's a lot better than what the bank's paying right now. So.
Raise your hand if you come. Easier walk.
Hi, Norman Lewitzer here. I was talking to one of the locate guys the other day. You mentioned that Carmel's putting in a city-owned fiber optic network, and that slipped in on me. I'm kind of interested in that stuff, as you might remember, but could you comment on that?
Sure. We've had a lot of fiber optics in the city for some time. We've expanded on it over the years. Timothy Rennick, who's head of our IT department in the city, put together a plan that could be done in phases over the next several decades. But right now we're working on a ring. We basically have a ring around the city. A lot of city facilities, for instance, one of the practical uses of that, we have to train our firefighters. We have to take them out of that station, take them to a training location. We have to put other firefighters in those positions and pay overtime. And with a fiber optic ring, it helps us be able to do that sort of education just through the fiber optic connections. And they can do it right in the station. So there's money-saving opportunities for us. Communications in general are really important in emergency situations, which the city hopefully is prepared to deal with. Timothy Rennick, you ought to give him a call if you have an interest in exactly, because it's way, way over my pay grade. I don't understand a lot of this stuff.
Anyone else? Well, anybody else? If you're more comfortable, I don't see any other hands come up, we can just kind of, if you feel like going, you go in, and we can just, here we go. We'll do that. There you go.
I don't know much about 5G, but I've seen these big black boxes appearing all over the place. Can you kind of explain about that? Because I thought at one point the city was trying to prevent that.
So I'll tell a little bit. I know that Hampton Mayor knows a lot more than me. So some of this is limited by the state legislature. So Carmel was trying to prohibit where the 5G small cell towers could be placed. We don't want to see them pop up in people's yard right next to your window. The state legislature passed a law that basically prohibited the city from really kind of regulating a lot of aspects about it. So we get a lot of questions saying, hey, can you stop that or can you remove that? And the real answer is, unless the state law changes, our hands are tied.
Everything Adam said is absolutely correct. 5G was what I thought, again, I'm not a technical person, he says next generation of cell phone service, is what we were told. And the state legislature did pass a law preempting any city from regulating these things. And so there's, some people had questions about the science, how close to the house, how close to a school should they be. From an aesthetic standpoint, just looking nice, we also didn't want them right in front of somebody's house. So we started to talk, our staff in the planning department started to talk with all the representatives of these companies, knowing that we had no ability to regulate them as a community, but said, look, do you want us to go down to the legislature and scream and shout about taking away the power of local communities to decide where these things go? And they said, of course not. So they have been pretty good in working with us in designing those poles that look kind of fit in with the street lights that we have, and placement. They listen to us, and generally I don't see them going in front of houses or going on the property line or in places where they're probably less ugly. I don't know. At least they're not as obvious. And they're working with us on, we're taking opportunities to put street lamps on them when we can, since they're already wired for electricity. So that's what's going on. We're also trying to get a cell tower here on the east side. The city has land here at the golf course that wouldn't be seen by very many homes, and we've designed a tower. Verizon has agreed to go on it. People who live in this area, including me, know that half the time we don't have cell service right around here. So to really help. And AT&T called just the other day and said, we'll talk to you about that because we need 2 carriers to pay for the tower. The city would own the tower. I don't really want to be subsidizing it. We're taxpayers. I don't want taxpayers to be subsidizing it. If we get 2 carriers, it'll pay for itself. And then there's AT&T was also interested. I guess there's a blind spot over just west of 116th around Spring Mill too. So they're looking for a tower site over there. So hopefully we can get that sort of cell phone service, get those improvements. Yes?
Are you talking about a real tall?
Yeah, the old-fashioned type, the tall ones, yeah.
That'll be hard to sell west of Spring Mill on 160.
Yeah, I know. 18 said, well, we'll do the one on the east side if you help us with that one. I said, well, okay, I'll meet and we'll talk about it. So I want to see where exactly they're proposing. There may be some places, some big farms or something still there where they can put it where most people don't see it.
If you ever drive down Westfield Boulevard in Broad Ripple and go by the VFW Hall, I think it is. If you look in front of the VFW Hall, they have a beautiful stainless steel flagpole with a big American flag on it. It's a cell tower.
It's a cell tower, yeah. So they pointed that out to me a number of years ago, yeah. Yeah, there's some creative things that can be done. Any other?
Okay, here we go.
I was just wondering, Adam, this is your town hall, so I'm gonna ask you a question directly for you. So how do you plan to prioritize diversity in the city?
So it's kind of a big question. I would say more diversity is better for a city. Being a small business owner, I think having a variety of people, not only of race, religion, and background, but of economic, so we have a city for everyone, I think is important. We want to be a welcoming city, both in our, the way we have events and the businesses we offer. When we put on festivals, making sure that there's things for people of all ages. It's not just older people, it's not just kids, and everyone can feel represented and like they have something to do in the city. I do think it's important to have, we have the sister cities with China and Japan. We have representation there to let people know that we have a really diverse city. A lot of people really don't know it, actually, that the mayor was saying, how many houses that speak a language other than English? So,
I saw a statistic that I think 44 different languages.
yeah, 44 different languages are spoken in households in Carmel. So we have a lot more diversity than I think people know. So I think kind of getting that message out there. And then I think also just having leadership, I just try to always, no matter whether you're rich or poor or any race, try to treat everybody the same and try to treat everybody with respect. I have a 2-year-old daughter, and it's amazing, like when she's on the playground, she doesn't care what race a kid is or if they're disabled or anything. She just sees people as people. And I think at some point in human development, a lot of us lose that. And we lose that kindness, and I don't know how it happens or when it happens, but, at least personally, I want her to hold on to that as much as possible, and I try to remind me to kind of see the world the same way that my daughter sees it, and I try to do things that way. We have a lot of conversations with our police department. They can go into some of the details in some of the programs, but, we just try to make sure that this is a city for everybody.
Yeah, great cities have to make sure they're everybody from whatever background, rich, poor, different races, different places of origin, different religions, have an opportunity, an equal opportunity to succeed and thrive and prosper and be safe. Carmel's more diverse than a lot of places around Indiana. We're about close to 10% of our population, first generation from China, same about 10% from India. African American population has increased. We have a lot of religious diversity in the community. We put together an interfaith networks of people of different religions. The leaders of those different faith groups can talk to each other. When one of our synagogues was attacked on the west side a few years ago, the Muslim community was one of the first ones to step up and say that's not right. And that doesn't happen everywhere. It's because they had those relationships. We have a volunteer diversity group we put together where, again, leaders from different communities get to know each other. It's a forum, a place for, if there is a complaint or concern, a place for people to go. These are all public meetings, they're noticed. And then through city design, too, I think it's important and often overlooked in U.S. cities. It's the public square. Are we designing our city so that people drive into a garage and barely know their neighbors on either side of them? Or are we designing a city that's walkable and pedestrian friendly, filled with public squares where people from different backgrounds can hang out in essence and just get to know each other? I think our festivals and events provide opportunities to do that too, and I think that's important. That's what makes the country, we've always been a country with people of all different backgrounds. And if we want to progress, we need to make sure everybody has equal opportunities to succeed and a chance. Everything's so partisan nationally right now, so at least here, everything we do is to try to make sure we provide opportunities to talk to each other and get to know each other.
Thank you. Yeah, we create opportunity, I think, for everybody. I think that usually helps. And I talked to the mayor too, like in our business community, I'm a big advocate for small businesses, being a former small business owner, and just making sure that when we design the city and plan new spaces, that we have opportunities for new mom and pop businesses that are really interesting to come in and thrive. We've actually had a lot of those come in recently, but a lot of those things, I think when you create opportunity, it's good for everybody. Any other question? Okay.
Not in our district, Adam, but for the mayor, maybe the police chief, how do we get where we're at with the goat? Where are we going in light of the decision by the judge yesterday? And how many runs has the police department bet on to that place?
Well, we got a goat question. There you go.
For those of you who may not know, it was a bar along New Mona Boulevard. They had a lot of issues. It wasn't being managed the way we'd like to see it managed. The Board of Zoning, they'd asked for a variance, which is an exception to the zoning code, and the Board of Zoning Appeals voted 4-1 in a public meeting, publicly noticed after public testimony, to say no. And they did what every Board of Zoning Appeals then does around the state. When they sign the document, they just did that by email. They'd already voted in public. And the public access counselor said, no, that needed to be signed in public too, which is departure from where pretty much every city in the state does it. So the vote, they'll just do it again. I don't see a different result coming. In the meantime, they're still not in compliance with the zoning. They had been operating under an exception because they were good faith. They were pursuing a zoning change. So it's still closed, it remained closed. The judge was very clear, it remains closed until this is done. We'll start making sure they sign those documents in public just like they vote in public. That's what the court wants us to do. But that's where it stands today.
Does that affect other legislation or ruling?
No.
Just that.
No. I think that
The e-signature part.
yeah. You know, it was, you get into legal technicalities, but there's very short time frames on, so you go back 2 years, something that was done the same way, they've lost any right to complain about it at this point, or even a year. It's what we call cases in equity, and it's, remember the old saying, you can't sit on your hands, and that would apply to cases in equity as opposed to, I guess, a legal thing compared to, or contrasted to cases in law.
Thank you.
Anybody else? And people who have to go, don't feel like you're awkward having to get up. All right, I'll get rid of it.
Yes.
I'll talk really loud so you don't hit the microphone.
There you go.
I wanted to compliment Carmel Police, Chief Barlow. We had a fraud from one of our contractors. We build gyms and also operate gyms. We had one of our contractors got hacked and $750,000 was basically a fraud taken from them. Morley, Detective Morley and his assistant Harrison, outstanding. If you had anything like that, they got the money back, all $750,000, which is very rare. It went away, it went to another bank in New York instead of their bank in Cleveland. But the contractor, she had been tapped, the owner of it, they got her website, they changed her telephone number. You wouldn't believe how good these people are. I just want to compliment the Carmel Police, the detective on that, the FBI that we contacted said we have a very exceptional department here. And if you have any fraud or anything like that, immediately go, don't even hesitate. Let them know the quicker the better, because we were able to stop it from getting out of the country. And usually it's out in a day and a half, we stop it. So any type of fraud like that, please let them know. Thank you, Chief and Detective.
I guess I'm gonna go. Here you go.
I have a public safety question. We've been in Carmel since it was 27,000 population, and we've been very happy with the leadership and the services and everything. I'm concerned about Marion County. And I mean, the bullets don't automatically stop at 96th Street. And, you know, blood's flowing north, and I was just wondering, is there a plan?
I'm gonna hand the chief, but I want to say one thing about that. I grew up in Marion County, and I understand, I obviously follow the news. We had recently did some redevelopment money that was along the 96th Street border. And I asked the mayor about this, and I said, well, why are we spending money on 96th Street if it's gonna help the south part that it's not even our city? And he said, well, blight, it creeps north. And so as much as we're enhancing the northern half of that street, we want to make sure that our borders are really nice and are really secure and have patrols, but also, you know, putting those investments in to keep an eye on that. And then I think the chief could talk about what they do with some of the edges of the city.
I'm glad you brought it up because there's another task force we're just going to start participating in. Indiana legislators just came in effect July 1st, started a regional gun crimes intelligence network. Indianapolis has had a unit, major cities have these units, and they've taken a regional approach. And so officers will start there next week, and we've taken a whole different approach, and they're going after the shooters, the people who do all these shootings, and they're using technology. So 2 years ago, we started changing how we process guns. So if we make an arrest and someone has a weapon, we used to clear the weapon and put it in evidence. Now we'll bring one of our crime scene people over, collect it in a special way, take DNA, take fingerprints, and then also we'll send it to the state lab and they'll test fire it and compare it against casings. And in the last 2 years, we've sent 200 guns to be checked. 4 of them came back to multiple shootings in Indianapolis. We had a Walgreens robbery in December, and that gun, we caught him, came back to 3 different shootings. So we recognize that there's no big wall, that can happen. So we're taking a regional approach, and the initial task force has Fishers, Carmel, Avon, and Zionsville, along with Indianapolis Police Department and State Police. So I think, and there's actually reimbursement, so the city will get money back for that officer's time. So really no cost to us. Will be a 2-year test on see how it works, and they're going to take it statewide.
They talk about the mental drug test.
Yeah, and we have we have 2 task forces we participate in. One is the Hamilton Boone County Drug Task Force, since we've had since 1990, dealing mostly with drug issues, and we also sent an officer down to Indianapolis' Drug Task Force. So there's that constant working relationship, and I think we all recognized years ago, bad guys don't see borders, right? They're just going to where they want to commit their crime. So I think it's important to have these relationships, and not only ATF's involved in these relationships, DEA. It's a team effort. So we recognize that we're not going to wait till we start having a lot of gun violence up here. We want to start addressing it now.
Just to follow up, I know that I keep hearing that they have a problem with the courts in Marion County where they keep letting these people out. And do we have a plan for that?
I don't know. I mean, that's to do with Marion County. We really have much control over that. I know there's a lot of frustration with my colleagues that work in Indianapolis, and that is an issue, but there's not really anything I don't think we can do.
We the judges have to follow the law, but they have a lot of discretion as well. And so who you elect as judges here in Hamilton County, criminal laws for the most part are state law. Bank robbery because they're national banks, that's federal law, but most crimes are state. And so they're tried in state courts in the county where the alleged offense was committed. And so who you elect as judges makes a difference. And I think that's the best answer to that question. I did generally, even though I was upset with the judge on the goat ruling, overall, our judges here are pretty good. No, he's a good judge too, we just disagreed on that.
This is for you.
Yeah, okay.
What can you tell us about the property that I believe the Kite Company owns at 116th Street and Range Line? There's been a fence around it for a couple of years now. And is there any progress being made there?
So I'll tell you what I know, and then the mayor can fill any gaps that I have. So That has been a project for a couple of years. We've seen designs, but I think when I asked the Carmel Redevelopment Commission, and for those of you who don't know, we do have this body called the Carmel Redevelopment Commission, and they're doing all the projects that kind of takes Carmel from one thing and transforming it into kind of what we see today. They were working on this project, and I think the architecture wasn't exactly where they wanted, so they were going back and forth with the developer to make sure that we can get it 100% perfect, because when we approve these buildings, the idea is we want it there forever. We don't want to build something and then have it just be torn down in a couple of years. We try to think of the architecture, timeless design, the quality of the building, and just how the city will grow, that these new buildings will last for decades and decades. I am a little, and this is, what's done is done, I wish they didn't tear up everything so soon. You know, that pizza place there, Mackenzie River, could have been open for a couple more years. But I guess, I mean, that was their private decision, but what's done is done, and the hope is that we can get a project moving there soon.
That's right, Adam. It is a public-private partnership on that site. Kite Company chose to tear down the center long before I would have been doing it. There's another Mackenzie River Pizzas in Bozeman, Montana. It's a local family that likes to ski. They had one here and one there. There's two in the country. But they tore it down. They had shown us some architecture, which our architect worked with them, because we're going to take, it's going to be a 5-story building. It's going to have ground floor retail, like a lot of the buildings in the downtown area, and then housing above it. The parking is going to be hidden, again, for aesthetic purposes. And then, the budget got cut, and they tried to show us some architecture. They showed us some architecture that we said, look, if you're going to use that, we're going to let you use your increase in taxes to build that parking garage. We want better architecture than that. And so we went back and forth for about 1.5 years. We finally agreed on the architecture, and they should be breaking ground here fairly soon. They told me the other day, fairly soon, and I asked what that meant, and didn't get a real clear answer, but I still think before winter.
And what about the property directly across the street where the service station is now? I understand there's plans to develop that corner.
Yeah, there's been some discussions with the owners of the service station. Nothing definite yet.
And that roundabout?
Yeah, the roundabout's coming at the street. We had some good statistics in our roundabouts this year. We started to run fatality. It's hard to do personal injuries because somebody may have back pain 3 days later and go to the doctor then, we never know. It's hard to, but when somebody dies in a traffic accident, we know about that. And so it's a hard, firm number. As we started to look at our traffic fatalities per 100,000 versus other cities around Indiana, we looked at a 5-year average. Our traffic fatality rate is 2 per 100,000. Indianapolis, with the same weather, same drivers, 12, just under 12, 11.8, I think, 11.7 per 100,000, 5-year average. Columbus, Indiana, 25 fatalities. Again, that's based as if they were, so it's 12, they're 50,000, but on 100,000, so you just do the math to make it 100,000. Valparaiso's up over 31 per 100,000 per year. But we're 1/6 of Indianapolis, which is probably the better comparison. So the U.S. average is between 12 and 14 per 100,000. We're at 2. So that gives our roundabouts. Like, anybody here ever speed through a stoplight? Of course not. Then the human error rate kicks in, and you end up with a bad result. The roundabouts, even if there's a mistake, you have more time to recover, and we move more cars per hour, so we have to make as many lanes. And over time, not buying those stoplights saves us a lot of money too. A new stoplight, Jeremy's what is it, about $300,000 now to put a stoplight in? So for have a choice converting four-way stop, either roundabout or stoplight. The roundabout's a lot cheaper. If we're taking out a stoplight and adding a bunch of pavement, moving utilities, or roundabouts can get pretty pricey. But it's worth it because we're saving lives.
Oh, what do you got?
I just want to grab on that because you were asking about the 116th range line roundabout, and I know that's kind of taken a while. I'll hand it to Jeremy, who can talk a little bit about their project. But from what I understood, when they do it, they're going to do a partial closure instead of a, that's still correct, right?
Yeah.
So instead of a full closure, with the goal that you could still get through there. I think the city tries its best with road closures. I mean, I've been a business owner and I know how it can affect business. So, I mean, and I probably called the mayor upset sometime and he understood. Okay.
So we try to do our roundabout closures 45, 60 days or less.
Yeah.
I have been asked a number of years ago to go talk to the Healdsburg, California, north of Napa Valley, that we're gonna do a roundabout, and they knew we built all these roundabouts, and I have a son that lives out there, so I went out and talked to their city council, and they started this roundabout project, one roundabout, took 3.5 years. And I know because my daughter-in-law's uncle lives there, and I get these reports back. So I think Jeremy, your 70 days is okay compared to that. So we bid the 116th and Range Lane roundabout and the Medical Drive and Range Lane roundabout together. It was just over $6 million, I think, for those two. The one at 116th and Range Lane is complicated. There's a lot of underground utilities we have to pay to move. But we're going to start on the one Medical Drive, what, soon?
Medical will be this fall.
This fall, and then
45-day closure.
45-day closure, not 3 years, okay.
And then 116th Street will be next spring, summer.
Next spring and summer will be 116th and Range Lane.
Be done just like we did in college and Guilford last year.
Yeah.
And just to add to that, when we do have the road closures, at least, and I think the city does a good job, and if we could do a better job at this, just let us know, and that's where, just email me, or I will try to my best to answer any questions. I think I had some questions about a lot of questions, in fact, about the 126th Street Bridge, and I was trying to get that out as soon as I can. But we want to make sure people know about other routes. The worst thing in road construction is to not know what's happening. You're driving somewhere, and boom, you got to stop, and you thought, if I would have just known, I could have taken this other route. And many of us who've been in Carmel for a while, we know which routes to take, we just have to know about which road closures. So they do have a website called Carmel Link 2.0, Twitter page, a Facebook page. I try to send it out, but if you have questions, let me know. And this is where I need help everybody in this room. When we do have ones that affect businesses, please try to go, even though it takes more time out of your way, to go get a pizza or don't change barbers just because things changed. It's going to be tough for those businesses, so we really want to come out and support them. I know the city has bought some ads in the past and put up signage to let people know, but we want, when that construction is over, for all those businesses to still be there, and then now do even better. Now they have better streets and more walkability. They'll thrive once the construction is over. And then here, on to Jeremy.
The only thing I'll add to that is we have in the last couple of years started adding all of our road closures into Waze. So if you have the Waze app, there's a way our GIS person's able to take our road closures. He can pre-program them in advance. So like on that day when it's closed, it'll be the most up-to-date information.
Thank you. I wondered if you could talk about the comp plan revision, why we're doing that, how it's being done, how it's been advertised, the town, the pop-ups, the webinars, how people get information about that, and also would like to request that the city consider district meetings to specific districts like this one to discuss how that would specifically impact your district in terms of what the comp plan would be.
So
I'll answer a little already know and then hand it off, because I want to make sure I'm answering questions too, so people don't think I'm, so the comprehensive plan is really a guideline that kind of guides everything when it comes to new roads, new homes, new developments. It'll say this is the type of homes, whether it's mixed use or single family, what type of density. It isn't binding, but it is a really good guideline that we look at when we're approving new projects to say, does this fit with the vision that the city has agreed upon? So we're all kind of playing from the same playbook. It has not been updated in quite some time. So as you might see, there are a lot of projects recently where maybe it doesn't mesh with the comp plan. I think 2009 was the last time that it was updated. Is that, or 2010? Yeah. So we're updating it to reflect our plans, and they're really trying to get community input. I will say for Southeast Carmel, and I think the mayor may talk about this, I don't think there are major changes, just because Southeast Carmel is pretty built out. I've been in office for a year and a half, I haven't had a single new housing project proposed in Southeast Carmel. So Southeast Carmel, the district that I represent, kind of has its identity already. Where we're seeing this really have a big effect would be in the center of Carmel, where we've got a lot of new development, and the west of Carmel, where there was a lot of farmland that's being bought and now turned into housing. So it doesn't necessarily affect Southeast Carmel as much, but as a city councilor, we do care about what happens for the entire city.
Yeah, for those of you that may not be familiar with the term comp plan, what it really is comprehensive land use plan. And state law requires that roughly once a decade, there aren't any penalties if you're take 11 years instead of 10, but about every 10 years you're supposed to hold public hearings, and then our advisory plan commission weighs in, and then it comes to the city council for approval. And it is a plan. It is not zoning. It is not the law, although it is adopted eventually by the city council. And so we try to go far beyond the state law requirements in getting public input. And you know, in a growing community, there's a lot of different ideas about what type of development people want and what's best, what's walkable, and people are different, they have different ideas. So it's always a good process. You hear a lot of opinions, but it's a process, and we're in that process now. So there will continue to go to the website. There'll continue to be opportunities. I'm not up to speed on every one exactly, but there's lots of opportunities to provide input to the people that will eventually adopt the plan. And then when developers come to us, of course, everybody has the right to petition under the U.S. Constitution. And so people say to me sometimes, like, why do you even let that developer ask to do this? I said, well, they have a right to petition under the Constitution. We don't have to agree to it. But this plan, this comprehensive land use plan, is meant to be a guiding document when those decisions are made. So that's the comprehensive land use plan.
And one thing I want to add too is I'm interested in finding out opportunities to have a variety of housing options in Carmel. And when I say that, you know, I talk to people in the Southeast District. There are people who may want to downsize. They've got a 5 or 6 bedroom home, all their kids are grown up, and they'd like to get a smaller empty nester house. But as we've seen, a lot of the empty nester options in Carmel go really fast. So, you know, I'm interested to find out ways that we could encourage homes that people through different stages of life could afford, both, you know, millennials who are maybe buying their first home, or empty nesters who maybe want to sell their home but don't want to take on another mortgage when they buy a smaller home. So if there are options for that, that's the kind of questions I'll be kind of asking when it reaches us.
So I'd like to go back to a few questions ago with the Marion County question. So when we're talking about, the language was used of patrolling the border between 96th Street, south of 96th Street. So when we're talking about that, there is a very real feeling of driving while black in Carmel. People are worried to drive through Carmel after dark. I have friends who won't come here after dark if they're black because they're worried about being harassed by the police. So when we talk about patrolling the border, how do we keep Carmel safe while also making sure people feel comfortable driving through Carmel?
So I'm going to hand this to the chief, but I'll just say first off, I'm going to talk about making sure everybody feels welcome in Carmel, and I think that's part of it too. Making sure that everyone's interaction with the police department hopefully can be a pleasant one, especially if it's something as simple as a speeding ticket. We do have a really robust complaint department that we do take very seriously. It's all open to the public. The chief could talk more about that. So we want to make sure if someone does have a negative experience with the police department, that we get that information, that we don't just brush it off, and that if there's things that can be improved, they try to really inform the council about those things going on. But yeah, I remember those same kind of things, and we have taken that seriously. We have had a lot of conversations about that.
Well, I know I've
yeah.
had them with the police.
Yeah.
And they've been very great. We really love working with you. But when we use the language.
Well, but that's why it's important that you bring that up too, and important to have these kind of meetings, is because, to find those values that people have in the community and the things that, me being a straight white man may not always experience or know, so you've got to get out and talk to people of different backgrounds in order to find out how they feel about things. But I'll talk to the chief will kind of explain a little more what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily comfortable with that term either, right, patrolling the border. I think we recognize that, we're upward to, I think it was 85% of our crime is committed by non-Carmel residents. So we recognize that most criminals are coming to Carmel for a variety of reasons. And so you got to balance that. And I think it goes back to, you talk about diversity is our hiring process, right? And being diverse as a department. We're very well represented, believe it or not, in two areas that we're not well represented is Asian and women in our workforce. So I think it starts there, and it starts with policies. The mayor brought up, we're a nationally accredited agency. Our officers wear body cameras and in-car cameras. So I think policing needs to be, and I think that's the challenge. I think we've done a good job of that, is because we hold our officers accountable in how they treat people. If people commits a violation, it needs to be, we need to address that, but we can do it in a professional, in a fair way. I think that's the balance that what we need to do, because we want to keep the very safe community very safe, make sure people are comfortable. And we want all, nothing distressing more to hear someone has a friend or have a conversation that their son won't come to Carmel. And I think that there's a perception, and real or imagined, that perception can be damaging. But yeah, I think it goes back on a giant pie. And I think that we recognize that crime comes from other place, but we can't treat everyone like they're a criminal, no matter where they're from, what they look like.
I just wanted to speak to that for a second. I think, just in general, I think it comes down to us, if we're business owners or residents or whatever in Carmel, if leadership is trying to get it right, but we as individuals aren't doing our part, then, it's easy to say, I wish there were more diversity. Well, do you have friends that don't look like you? And if you do, are you bringing them and their families out here to enjoy the community and spreading that and creating that kind of community and that conversation with them? And I think that each of us, if we do our part to make sure that if someone comes across 96th Street, it's a friend of ours, and we show them around so they understand that whatever color they are or whatever background they have, whatever religion they have, that when they come across here, that we're just people as well. And right now, we are working on, creating more diversity, but if 80% of the population or 70% of it kind of looks like us, well, we need to be people extending even though you don't look like me, you're a friend of mine, and this community's for you as well. And we get to kind of be that bridge for people, which then creates that bridge between geographical regions, I believe.
I mean, we're a great city, but it doesn't mean there aren't things we can do better when it comes to the perception or being more welcoming. So we always are trying to look for ways that we can improve upon that. It's not any slight to be critical about the city, but if you're not looking at getting better, then you're getting worse. So.
Thanks, Adam. Adam, first I want to commend you for having this call session where you can be interrogated by your constituents. It's not everyone, not all politicians have this. So first, I've had a few interactions with the Carmel police, unfortunately, where they claimed I was speeding, and they've always treated me very professionally. So I want to thank you guys for that, but don't stop me anymore. With regards to like Midtown, I took some of our friends from out of town to Midtown, and I think they gave the best compliment that they can give, which is, we're walking around, they're like, wow, this is amazing. This is something Google would build, right? But this is, because they didn't expect that. Because they didn't really expect that in, frankly, Indiana city, right? So, but what else can the city do to attract some of these younger professionals, the knowledge-based workers, the creative workers, to Carmel, with stuff like Midtown that that they look for in places like Broadway or downtown Indianapolis, so that the employers that employ those types of people can relocate here.
It's okay. I think if it gets too close to you, I think it doesn't work. I'll talk quickly and by the way, it's like 7:30 now, so if someone, please, I keep answering questions because I want to answer as many questions as we can for the public to really be transparent. So I think we're doing a good job of trying to make an attractive, walkable downtown that appeals to young people. Having public spaces like Midtown Plaza, interesting restaurants and shops, trying to make sure we're welcoming a diverse city are all things that I think people look for. Unfortunately, we still have some perceptions to overcome. If you talk to some young people who live in, Mass Ave or Fountain Square, maybe they don't think Carmel is cool. And I always say, well, have you been there? And they said, no, my friends told me about it. I don't need to go there. So we could find more opportunities through festivals and events and having interesting small businesses here that give them a chance to experience Carmel for the first time. If they come up to Carmel and see what we have to offer, I think a lot of people's mind gets changed. When it comes to regionally, getting corporate headquarters from other cities to locate here, we do have an economic development strategy. We have site selectors that work to try to attract them because they do really keep our taxes low. But I think having things like the Palladium or the Carmel Chris Kindle Market, these bring a lot of people from out of town.
And I can tell you, when I owned a restaurant, there were some people who would say, hey, I'm here for a business trip. I'm thinking of moving here. This is a great city. How come I didn't know about it before? So if we give them a chance to come here and experience what we have. We had a corporate headquarters come from San Diego with their beautiful weather and move here. A lot of it was because they liked the schools, they liked what was going on, and they saw how much a house costs in San Diego compared to a house in Carmel. And I think that sealed the deal for a lot of them. So I think it's just enhancing a lot of the things and then kind of recognizing any kind of perception we might have and trying to counter it.
Adam's right. Leno Boulevard's been we try to build a walkable. Every city needs a center, needs housing options. The basics is what a lot of cities struggle with, investing in good schools, safe, secure neighborhoods for everyone, bike paths, transportation, good air quality, all these things together making it an attractive place, but particularly walkable downtowns, green space, parks, make just a beautiful place for people to, they have choices where they choose to, especially the best and brightest people that these corporations want. Go anywhere in the world they want to go. They can they graduate from a really good university, or a degree that's in demand, they can go anywhere. And so we have to make sure that our city is a place that people want to raise their families and live, and that takes some investment. But I think when we make those investments, it brings enough private sector investment here that holds their taxes down. So not only we get a nice place to live, we get a lot of private sector investment, but focusing on schools, safety, and good water systems, good transportation systems, bike paths, walkability, beautiful downtown, parks. We can keep doing that, we can compete with the best places anywhere. Interesting, you mentioned Monon Boulevard. I was serving on a not-for-profit board on city design, and it was international, one of the gentlemen on it was Ian Gale from Denmark, and he has a really prominent planning firm in Europe. They work in Asia a lot, even the Middle East, South America. And I said, have you ever worked, they have a New York office. I said, have you ever worked in the Midwest before? And he said, no. I said, well, I'm going to send you an RFP. Give us a good price. So it was the cheapest out of all. And we hooked them up with a local firm. And Monon Boulevard and Monon Square were the result of that. So we brought in some ideas from different places. And we're going to continue to do that sort of thing in the downtown area to make it really special. When people come here, we want their jaw to drop and say, wow, this is really nice. And I think we keep doing that. We're going to keep, in fact, the project's about to start, we haven't talked about, is going to, not exactly like Monon Boulevard, but very similar to it, south of the tunnel in the Monon, going down to the south side of the city center. That's supposed to start any day. And then the extension of the garden south of City Hall, we call it Washinani, or the Japanese Sister City Garden. That's going to start as well. And that area will be enhanced much like the Midtown area was. Think back the way that was a few years ago. We had a bunch of abandoned industrial buildings there. It's a big improvement. And, you know, we keep going to our fringes and expanding our roads, which requires fire protection and police protection. It just extends the area we cost. We already have fire protection. One fire station costs several $1 million a year just to staff. And so we already have this infrastructure in the downtown area. If our redevelopment commission can then put those, what we call brownfield sites, on equal footing, equal playing field with the greenfield sites, we save tremendous amounts of money as a community, and you build something really cool too.
One other thing I want to note, and then I'll take one more, and then I feel I want to hold our police up from their families, so I'm going to try to wrap up, but I'll stick around. I will note, talking about the amenities and talking about diversity, we have, you might have seen the handout, 2 new murals coming. I know we get mixed reaction on some of the public art, but I'm really excited about these.
When Claudia's back here and her daughter is doing the
awesome.
the Monon Tunnel on the City Center Drive.
So we've got a Carmel High School student who designed an awesome mural that's going to go at the tunnel, celebration to music right near the Palladium. And then out behind the, is the optometrist office? Yeah, right where my restaurant was. We've got a celebration for Black heroes and heroines who are local to Indiana. These are all that's an Indianapolis-based artist, so we're doing local artists. And that one also, Carmel High School students had a big part in spearheading that. So I like that we have projects like that that are celebrating our diversity. We're getting our students involved in the artwork, and I think will be really cool. I'll take one more, and then I'm going to kind of just do one-on-one so people can get to their families. Yes.
I want to make a comment and ask a question. I think part of the issue in talking about diversity is also talking about diversity in housing. And I actually raised my family in this part of Carmel. We were along Moss Drive in a small ranch house. We were in Carolina Commons, a 2-story house, and I'm now in a 0-lot home. And I would like to make sure that as Carmel continues to grow, that we keep a diversity of these different types of housing. And when I see so many apartments and so many townhomes that have gone in over the last 10 years, I think, was it 50% over the last 10 years compared to maybe 20% the previous 10 years. It concerns me that we're losing the stock of ranch homes that, that exist in different parts of the city that are more affordable. It concerns me that people are losing the chance to have a house on a larger estate because those will be divided up in very small amounts that are not necessarily appropriate to the next. So I wanted to throw that out in terms of diversity. I think that's as important, as a lot of the other issues. The question I have is about redistricting. After the census, our population had changed enough that are we supposed to redistrict now? And if so, when?
So I know a little about that. I work at the State House during the day, and they were getting a lot of questions about that. Yes, there are going to be different districts. At first, I think the state will probably go first, right? So state representative, and Hamilton County's seen a lot of population growth. We may have an additional state representative there. Obviously, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, they have different thoughts on how the lines should be drawn. As a city councilor, I always say there's not a Democrat or Republican way to fill a pothole, so I just, not worry about that stuff and just do what I think is right for people. But yeah, there could be a chance we're seeing population growth in the center of Carmel and in the west side, and the goal with the districts is always to have them about evenly numbered. If you have a city council district that has fewer residents, it's almost as if those people's vote count more because there's fewer voters per representative. So you want to have about equal votes in each district. So they'll look at that. We also want to keep normal geographical lines. We don't want to have crazy maps. I really love that I can explain my district lines in like 3 sentences to people. East of Keystone, south of 126th Street, except between between Keystone and Gray Road, it goes up to Main Street. That's all I have to say. There's no crazy map I have to explain to people. So I hope mine stays not too hard for me to explain. But the mayor might have more thoughts on that.
Yeah, the Constitution requires, one person, one vote, and so courts have clearly said over the years, can't be exact, but they give you ranges. And if you look at our city council maps, they're not gerrymandered at all. They are rectangular or squares and right along major streets. That's not always the case in some of the state legislative districts because each side's fighting to get the best advantage they can. I've always been a big proponent of a nonpartisan commission to draw those lines statewide, but nobody at the State House agreed with me yet and passed that law. So.
I will say one more thing.
It was discussed though last year.
I'll talk about your comment about the variety of housing. Our first home that we bought was a single floor ranch home. The basement was unfinished. I actually spent my money to refinish it and to enhance the home value. And without housing options like that, we might not have been homeowners in Carmel because, we're starting out, you have so much money. We were fortunate with low interest rates and our home value going up. We were able to use that to get a larger home as we grew our family. But I think it's important to have those options for people who are both, like I said, maybe it's their first home and they want to find a way, or they're empty nester. I think home ownership's become a little harder, less attainable for people, and I think that's a shame. It used to say that life, instead of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it was life, liberty, and property. And some of our nation's founders actually felt that, every person should be able to have the dream of owning a home. And it's not just Carmel, it's nationwide. That dream has become harder and harder. But we can work to try to get a variety of high-quality housing stock in Carmel, and that should be able to help everyone. So, thank you, everybody. I'm going to end it.